How cyber warfare targets the U.S. grid. On December 23, 2015, grid operators in western Ukraine watched in absolute horror as their control screens began to act independently. A sophisticated state-sponsored cyber attack had breached their internal networks. For over 3 hours, attackers systematically opened circuit breakers across 30 substations, plunging more than 230,000 consumers into total darkness. To the mainstream media, it was a localized geopolitical headline. But to the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or NERC, it was a terrifying proof of concept. The greatest machine ever built by humanity, the United States power grid, is no longer just vulnerable to physical storms or hardware degradation. It is actively being mapped, probed, and targeted by invisible digital entities. As we aggressively digitize the grid to accommodate volatile AI data center loads and smart grid routing, we are opening up millions of new digital entry points. Today, we are looking at the final frontier of grid mechanics, physical security, and cyber resilience. We will break down the exact engineering of a black start recovery protocol, the terrifying reality of operational technology hacking, and how billions of dollars of institutional capital are shifting to protect the nervous system of the American economy. To understand grid cybersecurity, you must understand the separation between information technology, IT, and operational technology, OT. When a standard corporation gets hacked, the attackers target IT systems. They steal emails, breach databases, or encrypt financial files. It's expensive and disruptive, but it doesn't break physical objects. However, when an adversary targets an electrical utility, they are targeting the OT network. They want access to the SCADA systems, the industrial control networks that physically open and close circuit breakers and adjust the frequency of massive generation plants. The terrifying reality of OT security is that many of the core components regulating America's substations, like programmable logic controllers and remote terminal units, were designed decades ago. They were engineered for absolute physical reliability, not digital defense. They lack basic encryption because they were originally built to run on isolated, closed networks. But to optimize the modern grid for massive AI capital expenditures and distributed renewable energy, utilities have had to connect these legacy OT systems to the internet. This creates a massive digital attack surface. A compromised employee laptop on the corporate IT side can act as a gateway, allowing malicious code to bleed into the critical OT network, granting an adversary physical control over high-voltage hardware. While the digital threat grows exponentially, the physical threat hasn't gone away. Following the 2013 Metcalfe sniper attack we discussed earlier in this series, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission issued CIP 014, a mandatory physical security standard, forcing utilities to identify and harden their most critical grid nodes. If an adversary takes out just a handful of highly specific substations simultaneously, it could trigger a cascading regional blackout that could take months to recover from. Substation engineering has fundamentally transformed. Utilities are spending billions of dollars installing high-strength ballistic barriers around their large power transformers. These aren't just concrete walls. They are carefully engineered thermal shields designed to withstand high-velocity rifle rounds, while still allowing thousands of gallons of cooling mineral oil to circulate through exterior radiators. Furthermore, advanced substations are deploying military-grade acoustic sensors and thermal imaging cameras integrated with AI analytics. If a drone approaches a high-voltage corridor or a physical fence is touched, the system doesn't just alert a local guard. It automatically triggers a SCADA protocol, preparing adjacent substations to isolate the node within milliseconds if a catastrophic physical failure occurs. But what happens if the worst-case scenario occurs? What if a coordinated physical and cyber attack successfully takes down an entire regional interconnection pool? You cannot just flip a switch to turn America back on. This brings us to the most guarded protocol in the energy sector, the black start. Most large power plants require a massive amount of electricity just to start up their own systems. A nuclear or coal facility needs external grid power to run its immense cooling pumps, coal pulverizers, and draft fans. If the entire grid is dead, these giant plants are completely paralyzed. They are bricked. To recover, engineers must execute a highly choreographed, step-by-step sequence using black start units. These are small, independent generation sources, typically diesel generators, hydroelectric dams, or specialized gas turbines that can start up entirely on their own without external grid power. Once a black start unit is online, engineers carefully energize a single transmission corridor, carving out a tiny island of stability. They then use that small pocket of power to jumpstart a larger power plant down the line. This process is repeated agonizingly slowly across days or even weeks. If you rush it, or if the grid frequency fluctuates by even a fraction of a hertz during the restoration, the system will violently trip offline again, resetting the clock. For institutional markets, a prolonged black start event is the ultimate systemic risk, a black sky scenario that threatens to completely freeze global supply chains and digital asset liquidity. Over the course of this launch series, we have pulled back the curtain on the massive, hidden infrastructure that powers our digital civilization. We've seen how the grid is squeezed by unprecedented AI demand, choked by supply chain hardware deficits, paralyzed by regulatory cues, and threatened by invisible digital adversaries. The modern electrical grid is no longer a static utility asset. It is an active, evolving ecosystem at the absolute intersection of macroeconomics, advanced physics, and national security. The corporations, engineers, and investors who understand the mechanics of this machine are the ones who will shape the financial structure of the coming decades. Thank you for executing this first complete series with me. If you are ready to stay on the absolute bleeding edge of global infrastructure analysis, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment below with which grid bottleneck we should investigate next. This is USA Grid Mechanics.